Hi, welcome to the class Organizational Development and Change. I'm Dave Dunitz and I'm going to be your professor. Now, I am really excited about this class because it's a class that focuses on things that are really important. First of all, it focuses on organizations, groups of people who are working together to accomplish something. That's the organization part in organizational development and change. And it's talking about development and change within organizations. Now, what is development? Development is basically adjusting to changes in the environment and internal changes. So what this course is about is helping organizations, which we're all part of, to adjust, to change, to better adapt to everything that's happening within them and around them. So, since organizations play such a major part in our life, I think this is a really important topic. Now, let me tell you a little bit about my background. First of all, my name is kind of strange, Dave Dunitz. It sounds a lot like donuts. And if you look at how it's spelled, you can say, why in the world would somebody spell it that way? Well, it seemed like a good idea to my great-grandfather when he came to America, but it probably wasn't. But let me tell you a little bit more about my background. I started off my career as an aerospace engineer here in Southern California, focusing on solid-state electronics, and I worked on projects like missions to Venus and Jupiter. But that really wasn't my personality, my gifting, my interest. And I became a pastor and church planter in France. My wife and I lived in France for 17 years, and we worked to plant 2 churches and help lead several other organizations. And during this time, I developed a passion for seeing Christian organizations run effectively. About 10 years ago, God opened up the doors for us to come back to America and to move into research. And for the last 8 years, I've been teaching at APU, sometimes full-time, sometimes part-time, and both in the business department and in the psychology department. I'm a research psychologist, and so besides teaching classes and doing consulting, I do a lot of writing and research. And the focus of my research program is interpersonal processes in Christian organizations, especially conflict processes, because I've seen so often how Christians usually, maybe not usually, but often don't handle conflicts very well, and they can be very destructive rather than be constructive, which I think is what God would prefer. So I do a lot of research and writing on Christian organizations, nonprofit organizations, and a lot of what I write is applicable to for-profit organizations also, but I focus on the interpersonal interactions. Now let's talk about this course, Organizational Development and Change. The main focus of this course is a field called Organization Development. Now, organization development is more narrow than the idea of organizational development. Organization development is a movement that started about 50 years ago, and what it is it focuses on what managers and consultants can do to help organizations run more smoothly, but it's very values driven. Often they say they have humanistic values, meaning that the idea that people are really important. And so what organization development does is it focuses more on people rather than on the economic or the profit-making side of an organization. It focuses on the people side of the organization. One way to understand this field of organization development is with a sports analogy. If you're on a team like a basketball team or a football team, there's different things that are important. For sure, winning versus losing is important, and that's one of the goals that all teams have. But most teams don't win the championship, and about half the teams lose more than they win. So there's other things that are important too that hold teams together, and that's basically how people play together. Are they cooperating? Are they enjoying being with each other? Are they making progress together? Are they coordinating all of their efforts so that the team functions as a team rather than just individuals? And so we can use this analogy of sports where organization development focuses on how the team is playing together, not necessarily on whether winning or losing. Now, certainly winning or losing is important, but that's not what we're going to be focusing. We're not going to be focusing on strategic planning or finance or anything like that. Now, in some ways, the field of organization development is a response, a pushback to the top-down command and control type of leadership style that is often present in organizations. The idea of this, somebody has the authority and gets to do what they want with other people. Rather, organization development argues for a more democratic approach where all voices count. When a decision is made, organization development calls for managers to get input from everybody who's involved in the decision and to take into consideration everybody's concerns before final decisions are being made. Now, my own values align very closely with organization development. Like I've mentioned before, I'm a Christ follower. Jesus has done really great things in my life. I have a really neat testimony of how he saved me from a life of meaninglessness and despair, and how he just really changed me a lot internally, and I am committed to him and to his word. So I'm a Christ follower, and one of the most important things that Jesus taught us to do was to love one another. That because every individual is so important, we need to do whatever we can to love, to benefit, to take care of others around us. And there is no better place to love people than in organizations, because we spend so much time with them there, and that makes up such a large part of our life. So I really like this idea of doing things that are good for people inside of organizations. Let's talk a bit about some of the class mechanics. There's 2 textbooks in this class. There's the real thick book, the main textbook. That's it's a big one. The NTL Organization Development Handbook. Now, fortunately, the actual paper is pretty thick, so it's not as long as it looks, but that's going to be our main textbook. NTL used to stand for National Training Laboratory, and that's a think tank on the East Coast that had a lot of government funding to study organization development and group dynamics. Now it's more of a private organization that's simply known as NTL, but they still have lots of consultants that work with organizations that do organization development. So you'll be reading each week, each of the 6 weeks in the course. This is a concentrated 6-week course. You'll be reading probably about 4 or 5 chapters, and you'll have one assignment where you need to turn in a written paper for the reading of that week. And you'll also have one discussion question. Now I'm going to give you a list of discussion questions each week. Usually each discussion question is associated with a chapter, and you will work through that discussion question in the class discussions. So some people in your discussions will be answering one thing, other people will be answering something else, and it should make the class discussions more interesting, because instead of everybody writing about the same thing, you're going to have a choice about what you're going to write about in the class discussion, and hopefully this will help you get a much broader view of what's going on. Now, the second book that we're reading is called Christian Coaching. Coaching, the idea of working with somebody one-on-one in an organization to help them accomplish their goals, has become a very large part of organization development. So we're going to have a big focus on coaching. Now, this textbook is called Christian Coaching, but it's not written for how to do coaching in churches or Christian organizations. It's written for Christians who want to have Christ at the center of their life and how they can do coaching. Now, hopefully, from my perspective, it would be really great if all of you were followers of Christ and really committed to following him. But realistically, that might not be the case. Now, the way that Christian coaching is written is you will still get tons of information about coaching, and you will choose whether you want to take or leave the Christian aspect of it. But it's still got really great content about coaching. And so each week there'll be a general discussion about the material in the coaching textbook as well. Now, because this is a 6-week intensive course, there's a lot of reading and a lot of writing to do each week, because the discussion questions, they might generate responses that are very, very long. There's often several parts to the questions, and you'll have the assignments to do. So there's no major project to do at the end of the semester. Each week will have approximately the same amount of work to do. So hopefully that'll make this course a little easier. We have everything spread out evenly rather than a few easy weeks followed by a mad rush at the end. Well, I hope you enjoy this course. I hope you get a lot out of it. I hope you can see how it relates to your past organizational experiences and your present organizational experiences, so that you can make the biggest impact to help the most people possible.